Thank you all for the invitation. As you can imagine, I graduated in '82, and I remember sitting in this room as much as you have been sitting in this room, and some indelible comments from my wonderful, amazing, influential professors. Has influenced some of the work, well, all the work actually, that I'll be showing today. So I've got a bit of a message. If it comes through, that will be terrific. And I'm going to just begin with my drawing practice, and then segue into some large-scale coastal projects I'm working on right now. So they're not highly developed, finished. This nadir reflected on my Harvard exhibition, which was about the built form, the tectonic at a very large scale. These are about sketches of what's happening on the coastline of New York City, and the part that my firm, Karen Bausman Associates, is playing in that is the lead architect with an assembled group of professionals to move it forward and take on the vision of New York 2030. I'm going to begin with a bridge, and I'm going to end with a bridge. So, this line is in Gettysburg, and this line divides space. It is a division in history. It divided my family, north from south, and a nation. And has been, again, a sort of indelible mark in my life and in my thinking about space and how one constructs space, whether it's at the scale of landscape, land form, architectural form, so on and so on. The men in my father's family taught me how to read land form at a very young age. They were tobacco growers and brokers and were very much tied to the land and the cultivation of that land. Meditating on that idea of the line and form and marking space, cutting it, dividing it, and tying it back together. I did this 8-hour drawing. So the assignment to myself was to sit down and in 8 hours produce a drawing that would use form to unmake form. So by rapid inscription of form, it erases the form. The next project I felt compelled to share with you, is my thesis project from Cooper Union, and it's in the exhibition. It's in the Houghton Gallery right now. And the drawings, they were very large. You'll see them in the exhibition now, but at the time there was it's a suite of actually then 6 drawings. Elizabeth, Professor O'Donnell, was actually at my thesis presentation. And they were very large drawings. And the assignment I gave myself as a 5th-year thesis student was the model I made had to be the same size as the drawing. The drawing had to be the same size as the model. So it wasn't this idea of this, it's an 1/8-inch scale or 1/4 scale, or it literally was 1-to-1 as a model scale. And it was a great moment for me to understand the power of drawing writ large. And here's the model. So the model's about as large as this table, and I made it piece by piece in the studio, and it was a very important moment for me. From Houghton Gallery, it was then in Soho in a gallery, and it was placed between a work by Dennis Oppenheim and Mary Miss, 2 of my heroes at the time, and it gave me tremendous confidence. I thought, well, one can leave the studio and go out into the world and still pursue what is so important to yourself as an emerging voice and an artist. So, the other thing I wanted to speak about in terms of my work and my drawing practice was we had a history professor, Dory Ashton, who sat right here and provided us a window into the world of art and culture in New York City in a bracketed period of time from, say, the 20s through the 70s. And she was just wonderful to us and taught us so much. And in fact, I sat right here where this gentleman is sitting. And I always sat in the front row as close to as I could get to show true respect. Like I wasn't going to sleep, I was going to drink coffee, So I listened to every word she said, and we always made her smile because we were her dutiful, respectful students. Okay, so again, these are two projects that, and I did not know this. It was sort of when you throw a stone into the well and you get a splashback much later. I didn't realize how indelible this work was to me as it reemerged in my own work, but very differently, of course. So Dovecote and Planet Set are two drawings that I understand later resulted in a project. And then this one, the shadow here. So the figure and its shadow as a material had a huge effect on the work that I've done, as well as the idea of framing. And this one specifically, right there on Lauren Bacall's face with these glass planes and the lit line by color and just the changing frames. So I received a commission from the Formica Corporation to use a new material in an unexpected way, a surprising way. And the result of that was Constellation Screws, this very large screen that had navigational celestial charts across it, backlit. So the idea that was projecting notational form into space through light was something that was realized in this commission. It's a detail showing the light and its reflection across the material. The next one was a commission from the New York Times to reimagine U.S. currency, the most valuable currency in the world with the blandest money, graphically. So that was the assignment I gave to myself was to, one, come up with some ingenious system to foil counterfeiters. So the idea was to have many, many, many layers, like 30 layers of materials that would drive some counterfeiter nuts trying to unpack it and come up with the many layers. I also wanted to speak about cash crops, something that was important to my family and my heritage. So it's tobacco leaves, cotton, so on and so forth, embedded in these old etchings. Again, part of the counterfoil to the counterfeiters was that etchings are very, very, old-time etchings are very hard to replicate, almost impossible. And then finally, the cutouts. This is, again, the splashback from the well of Joseph Cornell's work. That, you know, these cutout shapes, they gave it a different depth. So it wasn't a formalist strategy. It was one that was very much about intuition and shape to shape. And as you know, when you're charretting, there's stuff all around you, and you just start grabbing things and putting it together, and all of a sudden this image starts to emerge in this landscape, in this incredible space. You go, yeah, that's it, right? So you've got your piece here and about 2 feet deep of paper all around you. So that's sort of where that emerged from. And then finally, another commission from the University of, the Cincinnati Art Museum was to reimagine the house of the, for the year 2000. They were surprised by this. They had a lot of houses, but this was my house, and the idea was that, like Giannis, we're looking forward and backwards simultaneous through a threshold that is infinitesimal, infra-thin, and vast and super thick, millennial thick. And here's the piece here. And so it got a lot of attention because they want to know how it was a house. So I just sort of placed it in the gallery and said very little and let people write what they wanted, how they wanted to respond to it. Again, that was another sort of assignment, one of sort of be quiet and listen. And then, for me, a pivotal project, and one that's tied to the drawing practice, is one titled The Wall Project. Again, it's the idea of line and how thick and thin that line is, how it connects and divides. And the assignment I gave myself was to walk the Manhattan grid. And the device I came up for that was, one of my test streets was 14th Street, so I started in the East River, went to the west, to the Hudson River, and I photographed every doorway along 14th Street on the north side. And then I replicated that again on 23rd Street. And here we are at the Cooper Union, of course. And then these are the preparatory drawings for the wall project. Again, the idea of how you mark space and how one disrupts the grid, how one unmakes form by locating form. And these are variations on that. And then we get to another set. I mean, as part of my drawing practice and assignment I give myself, I start many days with a drawing. And a drawing may take an hour, it may take a day, it may take a week, it may take a month. And I've been doing that for about 3 years, maybe 4 years, and I have this huge stack of drawings. Near my bed, in fact, like you wake up and you've got this idea in your head and you want to sit down and you're going to work on it. This is sort of my meditation. And it's very important to me, and it gives me a lot of solace and place to think. So the one, this red one here, all of a sudden when I started to cut into the paper and release the form from space, it became this moment where drawing was flexing towards sculpture. Very, very pivotal for me. So as a preparatory drawing for this project, the wall project, which was a proposal for the Battery, the very early moment of New York City, right there at the tip, the Battery. This is the Customs House, Cass Gilbert's Beaux-Arts building, and I placed it right square in front, and that's a visualization of it. And then here's the plan of the wall project. So it has no center. It is open, fluid, and flexible, which is a counterpoint to the Manhattan grid, which is rigid, a rigid iron grid, inflexible, and very persistent. This has a persistence all its own, but it is it's equal and opposite to that grid frame. The next projects I'm going to speak about are the city assembled projects that I've been working on. So here we are again. We're at Cooper Union, down here right here, and we're going to be going to West 69th Street on the Hudson, High Bridge on the western bluffs of the Bronx, the Harlem River, over to Soundview, which is on the Bronx River, and then to Ferry Point, which is just on the edge of the Long Island Sound. So these are large-scale coastal projects, and we're being, as architects, asked to reimagine and bring our best ideas to city finance-based projects. This is something that started with the Bloomberg administration, and because it's public, it takes a very long time for these to get through the pipe work to the point where they're given to the architects. That then we assemble teams of landscape architects, civil engineers, marine engineers. I mean, right now we have scuba divers on speed dial, which is kind of fun, actually. So the idea that the 520 miles of coastline we're going to be hardened. And by the way, today, for those of you who remember, it's the 6th anniversary of Sandy. And a lot of the city was, in fact, affected greatly by that moment in time. Including this neighborhood. We had all the sanitation trucks parked here because this is actually high ground in the village. So yeah, it was a $17 billion toll to the city, and right now the city calculated that for every dollar that they're investing, they're going to be saving $6 in the future. So that's what we're a part of. The protection, we're creating resiliency along the edge, and we're going to try to mitigate what's happening along the coast. I know this is important to New York as well as Boston and other cities. Boston always said, for 15 degrees of rotation, the Sandy could have hit Boston. So they are mindful of that potential. It's a big number, 3.7 billion, at least for public work here in New York, because it's federal, state, and local dollars. Where it's being invested and leveraged since about 2015. So that's when it really started rolling, and our involvement started about 2016. And then what we're really tasked with is connecting this sort of the access and the connectivity. We're reimagining the coastline because the city used to be centered to the center of the grid. and now it's being, the focus is to the exterior, to the edge of the grid. The first project I will show you is Ferry Point Waterfront Park. It's an eco-connective park, and New York's first eco-connective park, and part of our team is Karen Bausman Associates, landscape architects, Langen Engineering, who's doing the site work. In fact, it was so degraded that we had to add actually 2 feet of fill to the ground before we could do anything. And we started, I think it was with, I think 7 million, and now we're up to 25 million, and we're heading north of that, just because of the remediation that had to take place. So yes, and it's super important because it's a gateway to the Bronx and a whole connective system of parks, waterfront, and a lot of activity in terms of multimodal, bicycle, walking trails. So here we are. This is Ferry Point, and I just want to point out, because this is public work, as I said, it takes time. Private work, on the other hand, is the Trump Golf Course, which is right behind us. That's happened, right? We don't know whose money that is, but it happened. That's all I'm saying about that. And then here we are coming much closer. So the building that we're proposing is actually within line of the 18th Green. And that's, again, land that we're developing with Thomas Balsley and the associated structures to be, on the one hand, laid on the land, connect the water to the upland in a very sensitive way for all uses. So this is, okay, the Trump Golf Course is fine. This is what we have on our edge. It's degraded. It needs a lot of work. And the first moment when you go to the site is like, what are we going to do with this? This is a mess. And so we started developing the site plan and trying to connect different parts to a whole, and then we have to, of course, accommodate parking. Parking. Here's the building structure with a series. There's a series of curved walls throughout the landscape, tying the different moments together. And here's our proposal. It's a kayak concession. So part of this eco-connective park is that we can now get into the water. New York City always had these walls that you could never transgress because there was danger in the water. Now the water is less dangerous, so the idea is that we can get down into the water, literally. So this is about the active use area that we're developing, and this is a very simple structure, but as a windsurfer, I know how important it is to be able to see the building from the water because it gets foggy out there, you get lost. But it's all orange, including the roof, which made the Trump organization nuts because you can see it. You're going to be able to see an orange roof from the 18th Green. So they tried everything. I think we're going to win. They throw a lot at us, but I think we're going to hold the line. And so this is part of the get down area. So again, breaking down that edge so it is accessible for little young children to adults to real athletes. And then just some details of the building and its context. Because it's public work, you always have to show happy people, and if you have children with balloons, they're even happier. So there you have it. They're not exactly our Cooper cool drawings, but you are dealing with the public, and they have to feel welcomed, open hand to any project you're proposing for them. And then here's some of the details of the structures throughout, again, light on the land, but you can get out into the wetlands, the tidal pools, the oyster habitat, so on and so forth, all these little moments supporting the health of the coastline. The next project is Soundview, and that is on the Bronx River, and it's part of the Bronx Greenway, which is a very large system being pulled together to rehabilitate and refurbish and reimagine the Bronx. That has been one of the industrial powerhouses of New York City. Is a 5-borough entity, but we're now looking at it as a city saying, we need to clean it up. Fair enough. It was composed of marshland, and then, of course, the 20s with landfill really put tremendous pressure and degraded the land incredibly. Now we're going to be doing a 205-acre park, and tasked with that is the organization of that parkland as well as the municipal buildings that will engage the community on many levels in terms of park ranger stations, field house, concession, comfort station, so on and so forth. So it's in Queens. It's a very rich habitat. There's this whole idea that there's actually things that swim in the Bronx River now. And they've come back from the dead, and people are very excited about getting to that edge and getting in with a kayak and sort of running with the water-based, the marine life, and thinking that that's one way to get people to participate in its life. It's coming back to life. Future is great for everyone. So some of these are the stats, not insignificant. So here we are. Here's the Bronx River, and this is Soundview. It's very large, 205 acres all the way around here. And you can see right across the way is heavy industry, and this was all landfill and some public housing here, some residential housing here, and then a lot of the superhighways crossing through just north of here to get to New England. And then we go in closer, and here is Richmond Avenue and baseball fields here. This is our site, having a ranger station for that area. So I'm showing you one of a few projects. And this is what it looks like as you're approaching. So it's literally the end of the road there. And this is the water side. So it needs to be cleaned up, obviously. So we have embarked with, as part of the team, with a landscape architect to do a master plan of this whole piece and trying to connect the neighborhood with different activities. So soccer is hugely popular. Wetland habitat, studying those for the children near, in that community and the school children is very important. And then all the little areas such as an amphitheater, so on and so forth. And as well as we keep a buffer so that the tidal wetlands can clean and mitigate onshore rising tides. And then here's the detail. So we're right here. So you can see there's a woodland habitat, multi-purpose field, amphitheater, so on and so forth. And it's going to take a long time for this to happen, but you start with the master plan, and then as funding happens, and as it becomes more successful, you can actually go back to the federal government and say, we need another $30 million. Okay, we need another $60 million. Okay, we need another $20 million. And it starts to flow in, and it develops. And the community gets behind it more and more. And so here's our ranger station right here. It's going to have an open roof. Here's a plan, just a very straightforward. Here's the station itself, and here's some restroom areas and a large decking area that looks to the baseball field and into the wetland area. So that's just, real quick sketch of what's happening along the coast. Here's another one. Riverside South, this is closer to home in terms of it's in Manhattan, as we are sitting here in Manhattan. And it's, again, part of this waterfront greenway project, which envelops all 5 boroughs. And it's linking trails, bicycle trails, nature trails, and let's see, it's 66 acres and 32 upland acres when the whole Riverside Park South is complete. That land actually came from the Trump organization because they built residential towers on the upland side, and so the public lands below were to be supported by funds from that housing. Our design goals are to create a performance space and connecting a superstructure that's sitting in the Hudson River with a platform to the upper end, create a really vibrant performance space that's actually tied to the water. It's New York Central Penn Roads. Here they are. That's back in the day, the opening of the Miller Highway, when it was like, the highway's here, right in front of the river. Isn't that great? We now know this is not great. We now know, like, let's take this thing down, right? But that was when all the foodstuffs from the Midwest came into New York. This is an extension of the High Line. So all the foodstuffs from the Midwest came into New York and then were put here, put on these barges in the warehouses and then sent to Europe. So that's American corn, soybeans, and I dare say tobacco, my family's crop, was sent to Europe. Right through here, the Port of New York, and specifically the New York Central Penn Railroads. Here's a view of it. Here's the structure that we're reimagining as an event space, a performance space actually. But you can see, and it's a float bridge, so these floats are coming in with the containers. In the day, the railroad car was our containers of today, to load up, go across the Weehawken, and then head out. Still quite dense back in the day, so that's in the 20s. So here's the transfer bridge itself, and maybe you have run by there, seen it from the elevated Miller Highway. So yes, here's the Miller Highway. Here's all of Riverside Park South being developed. And there it is, sitting in the mighty Hudson River. Yes, and that's what it looks like today. So imagine, okay, Karen, what are you going to do with that? Well, okay, yeah, let me think about that. So it's, yeah, it was a very useful structure, a real workhorse on the waterfront. Right now, you could go there this evening and see a projection by artist Tony Olster. I believe it begins at 7, but this is part of his presentation. It's very good because the video on it has a time and space aspect to it, and it's about figures, and it's very mysterious and goblin-like, and great music, by the way. So here's a quick rendering, just a sketch. We did this for everyone at Riverside Park South. Say, hey, you know what we want to do? We want to bring glass. We want to bring a glass bridge through, 2 glass bridges. The transfer bridge has 2 bridges, a north and a south. So we're going to put a glass bridge through each of them. That's quite open. It's a very lacy glass box so that you can see all around. But you're not able to clamber up on this because, of course, the big concern is that people would get out and start to climb on the transfer bridge. That's what I would do, right? Architecture students, right? You want to get out there and climb on it and learn about it, right? But that would not be looked upon as a positive way to access the structure. So we're putting these glass structures in. Here it is from the the edge of the water. So we have a platform with glass into the superstructure, coming through these glass boxes, viewing boxes, and then onto a barge that then has an event space in it, seating all the way around. And the barges are quite large. They're 100 feet long, actually. And then here's a quick nighttime view just to show, again, there's the glass walkway, the pedestrian walkway into the glass box and then out to the venue out there. And then the next project is Highbridge Park. This is up on the western bluffs of the Bronx. And yeah, take a look at this. Okay, another one. The city said, okay, Karen, we want you to refurbish this. And yeah, okay. So I assembled landscape architects and civil engineers Langen and some other folks to help us reimagine this area. It is a vital link to the Harlem River from the Bronx side of Highbridge. And here it is back in the 20s. So this is the Manhattan side. Look at those curves. They're gorgeous. Gorgeous curves. And then we look on the Manhattan side. Here's the Step Street as it was in the 20s. A very active use area, and crossing over from Bronx to Manhattan along the Harlem River. This is the kind of image that stays with you. I think it's beautiful, the beautiful curves, and it also has a very contemporary feel in terms of form for our contemporary eyes. So yeah, it was designed by, I love this, the chief engineer was Isaac Newton, and so it's time-honored masonry, very heavy masonry structure, and it's a vertical drop of 102 feet. The reason it's such a vertical drop is, you know, Manhattan tips upward. The Manhattan schist tips up this way and then tips up that way. So the western bluffs of the Bronx are really quite high. They have a large drop. So we're transversing that 102 vertical drop with a step street, which is typical, not typical, but it's found in New York. We have these step streets on the upper west end of Manhattan because of that schist, shift, and shift. So our design goals are creating, again, a new design, a community performance space. So performance spaces are tied to all these projects from the architecture perspective, as well as being part of assembling the team to refurbish and rehabilitate the landscape supporting it. And again, that waterfront greenway is something that is happening on all 5 boroughs. And I'm sure those of you who bicycle know how important that is, that you can keep connecting, that you don't get cut off. If you're coming around Manhattan and heading up towards Queens, you don't want to get cut off. You want to just keep going. And likewise, when you get from Queens, you want to keep going to the Bronx, so on and so forth. And so here we are, way up. So here's the Major Deegan, here's the Cross Bronx. I mean, it's incredible in its own sense. But we have one little park area, High Bridge, which is a vital link to all of these pieces. And it has degraded so much because people had lost interest in it and lost the idea that it was a vital link. And we're going to reestablish its vitality, this linkage. And then here it is, it's under all these trees. I mean, it's like Sherwood Forest up there. These trees grew up since the 70s, actually, when they stopped maintaining a lot of these sites. There was a financial crisis in the 70s, and they stopped maintaining a lot of city sites. And this is a result of that. It has a heavy woodland feel to it, but it's really one that needs to be opened up again. And this is the High Bridge, actually, the first pedestrian bridge across a river in New York, Masonry Bridge. And then here it is today. So you can here's the High Bridge Park, which we're working on. Here's the actual step street itself in the Harlem River. So you can see all these types of connections all the way around it, and linking the upland down to the Harlem River waterfront and the Hudson River bicycle trail, which takes you back up into Westchester, New England, and then also keys us all the way into the bike land around New York. And here's a closer view. So you can see the step street here. So we're imagining as a performance space a canopy that allows views, but also light and different staging platforms across that 102 vertical drop. So in order to do that, we are connecting with, we're looking at all the connections, and again, we're obsessed with all the beautiful curves we're seeing. So with the step street that we have as a urban infrastructure, we're then starting to see where our influence can bring back a kind of a curve into the frame of the step street itself, which is orthogonal and rectilinear. So that's just kind of a quick trip around the boroughs, and as I said, it's more of as opposed to a design critique, it's more of a setting out on the table the issues that we're looking at right now in the last 2 years across the many boroughs and the coastal projects along the edges, and how one starts to think about it in terms of a broader stroke of connectivity, access from many modes of transportation. And for us, the most important is the pedestrian, the walkabout, as well as a bicycle. And so that's how we're going to be framing these projects from the perspective of the speed of the bicycle, the speed of the pedestrian, and in fact, as my landscape friends have taught me to say, park goers. So that's really what I wanted to present today, and the influence of my drawing practice on how I'm starting to inscribe landforms in space and locating the architecture within those inscriptions and releasing section space from those inscriptions, whether they're across the step street, in the Hudson River, on a very large coastal parkland, yeah. So thank you.
much.
Thank you.
There's a big leap that happens, obviously, between the drawing and major public projects. I wonder if you could outline a little bit, what are some of the obstacles in doing public works, and what are the protocols of engaging the city, the various other collaborators, and how you have been able to set a frame for what you do and what you do best.
I'll start with setting the frame. I think as an educator in architecture for some time, it's very helpful because you are dealing with public agencies and dealing with local communities. And they're not used to the terms and the conceptual framing and design ideas that we have here in the academy that we wrestle with every day with across the desk with students, or even with our peers, our colleagues, even some of our professional peers. Yeah, it really is public. So throughout I said I give myself assignments, and that's so important for me. I'm always, whenever I have a project, I'm given a task and say, okay, from any agency in the city, we have a design excellence contract. We've had multiple design excellence contracts from the city of New York as an architectural firm. So with that, you get this project, you're given certain projects and asked to complete certain tasks and assignments, and these happen to be long-term, large assignments with many millions of dollars attached to them. So I'm dealing with a whole range of entities and personalities, which takes a lot of energy, honestly. So in that, I always try to remember what my assignment is to myself, so that I can maintain a kind of control over the point of view that I have for these disparate sites, disparate programs, and disparate constituents. And so for me, that inscription, that drawing practice, and how one inscribes, and the nature of that inscription, and what it can do, and how to read it, and how to critique it, is what I focus on. And that's why, in fact, that my drawing practice, my meditation on drawing is so important to me, because you can get lost in the day-to-day back and forth with Department of Energy Conservation, the Department of Energy, DEP, the Department of Energy Protection, Department of Buildings, Department of Transportation, the State Department of Transportation. I mean, on and on. There's a whole alphabet of agencies that you must get approvals from every step of the way, whether it's the conceptualization of the project, all the permitting one has to get, not just to build it, but actually to study it. So yeah, it's rich and thick and full, but you need to provide yourself an assignment so that you can keep that North Star and keep in focus what's really important in a broad sense. So that it doesn't become atomized over many, many, many competing interests and constituents and opinions. There's a lot of opinions about what one should be doing or not doing. So you, as the lead, as the architect, you need to maintain a kind of frame for what is important.
So as a follow-up then, I would characterize some of your drawing work and artwork as maintaining a kind of introspective focus, a level of abstraction, and because you can, it is able to define the necessary insularity through which a work of art may be created. What happens as you enter the public frame with many collaborations and so forth, it's not only codes, but the democratic process of having to work with so many different agencies, opinions, community groups, comes to often impact a work of architecture, because they're asking for all the right things, but all the right things are challenging an architectural ethic. Are you finding that to be true, or is this something that...
It's very true, but you have to challenge it yourself personally every single day. from things like the color of the building, the paint color, and again, these are public projects, so they're not such as our private work, which is, in many projects, the sky's the limit, and we have clients who money really is not the most important thing because they have so much of it. These are public works, so every penny belongs to the taxpayer, which is you and me, right, and others. So things such as, why we're doing a public building in Brooklyn right now that is sort of lime green, and so the question was, why lime green? And so I had to make an impassioned plea about why it is lime green under green trees at a public tennis academy, as opposed to somebody I will not mention offered that it should just be some kind of blue checkerboard mix masonry, and I'm like, no, and I had to go to the barricades over a color. So that's just one moment. Another moment is access. For instance, going from an upland onto the gantry, the West 69th Street gantry. The idea of what that platform would be has been highly contested because of issues of safety, vandalism, so on and so forth. So everyday issue, is we have a grittiness to us, so to everyday life here. So the idea of vandal-proof, the idea of wear and tear, those do enter into it. So the materials are selected very carefully. They are selected because of those characteristics, and that palette might not be as broad as we have in a private world. Where in a private world, we can develop cool materials for specific projects, putting a lot of resource behind it. When it comes to public work, it has to be, it's got to be masonry, or that comes in so many colors, or it has to come in so many sizes, but we prefer this size over that size. So yeah, every detail is contested, and fair enough, because it belongs to everybody. It's not private, it's public. It belongs to everybody, so everybody gets to have a say in what it should be. And you are, as the architect, you facilitate the conversations, but you also try to keep a larger frame view, because you know that as many constituents there are, they'll all ask for a different color or a different material or a different detail, so it cannot be an amalgamation of all this, it can only be one. So you have to sort of maintain order. It takes a lot of energy, in the best sense. It's worth fighting for. It's worth arguing for. It's worth discussing. Yes?
Are there protocols of participation in terms of the general public to get to these neutral looks that aesthetics that you're talking about? I'm talking from the point of view of a European office. We do big public projects in Europe, where depending on the country, there are all these protocols of negotiation with the general public. I wonder how it happens here, so that you get to this neutrality that you're talking about.
Yes, well, there are protocols, and they're stringent. The most stringent right now is energy code. So any building you design, any public building you design, you have to sign and seal with your licensor that the windows are a certain energy, the walls, everything. You're signing everything. The windows, yet you're not building it. The contractor's building it, yet somehow you're responsible for the air infiltration of the glass through the aluminum frame. So yeah, those protocols are stringent, and they are valuable, because we want our buildings to be sustainable. Architects, we are contributing a lot of energy loss to the environment, so we need to work on that. And there are stringent protocols that public process requires.
But in terms of the general public, are there protocols of participation? For example, what happens in Norway and Spain, for instance, is that after a public project is published, then there's a period where the general public, especially the people of the area, can say certain things. There are meetings, so that certain things would be changed in the project.
We do it in the front end here, so you have community board meetings. New York City is made up of community boards. And so your project, these projects I showed, the reason they're all, what I showed you today is in a portfolios because they're all on public land. Any project on public land needs to go through a land use review. It needs to go through community board approval, multiple community board approvals. Then you have to go through, there are other groups, there's historic societies, say in Community Board 7, there's a historic community group, so you have to go speak with them. And they put you through your paces, ask many questions, and at the end of the day say something like, well, we have to do something. That's true, we have to do something, and that's what we're proposing, that we're going to be doing this. And then once you receive all those approvals, and you have to show all those approvals to every other agency down the line. So for instance, when we're doing a project and we have to get approval from the Department of Energy Protection, we have to show them the community board way back a year ago approved it. They have to see the letter, there's a number, there's a signature, sometimes there's a stamp. So they won't let you do your site water management during excavation until they see the community board letter. So it's all the way down, those approvals. So yeah, it's rigorous, it's intense. During the Bloomberg administration, which is when we had our first contract, design excellence contract, let me speak about that in a moment. The agencies did not speak to each other. They were silos, and they did not speak to one another. He went in and did a triage to get them to all work together, created different levels of communication. And now, for instance, if you're at a roadblock, say at the DOB, you can't get something through. That happened to us last week. You can get some very simple maneuver through, and I was tired of the roadblock, so I emailed the head of another agency and said, I'm having trouble. You can go to from commissioner to commissioner. So I wrote to one commissioner about a problem I had in another agency and CC'd that commissioner. But you know, next morning I get up in my email, bing, hey, good morning, gentlemen. And so we got it solved. And so you have to do a lot of that. You have to go to the top. And another sort of Cooper story is I was having a difficulty in another project, another protocol, and I couldn't get through for 6 months, a very simple thing, and I was really at my wit's end. And then finally I found out a Cooper classmate of mine, actually a year ahead of me, is head examiner of this agency. I got on the phone, I'm like, buddy, you gotta help me, what's going on here? It's like, you know, I remember every project you did in studio. You know, I know all your clothes, I know what you ate for lunch. What's going on here? And we got it solved. So, you know, sometimes your Cooper connections like kick in, big time. So in terms of protocol, these agencies have a rigorous approval. And the thing that was most important, this is my opinion, is that and it began with the federal government. I was actually involved at the federal level before it came to New York. Was this thing called design excellence. I think you might have been in that, design excellence with the GSA?
Yeah, I was in the GSA, but New York never accepts us.
Oh, okay. Welcome to protocol. No. So they did a wonderful thing, which is previously you receive projects based on the bid. So if you were the low bid, meaning if you're an architect and you said, I can do that project for $300,000. And then, oh yeah, well somebody can do it for $200,000. They're getting it. And who knows who they were, what the qualifications were. The only qualification was they were cheaper than everybody else, less expensive than everybody else, their fee. So they said, you know what, that might not be the best way to operate. And I look around, things look awful. So what can we do? So we created this program called Design Excellence, which means that you are qualified based on your design ideas, your portfolio of built work and the quality of it, its details, its sense of material, its sense of form, the way it fits the landscape, so on and so forth. So all of a sudden, the quality of the work was one of the deciding, if not the deciding factor. Again, with your record of achievement behind you. So that was a pivotal point. And the GSA, the General Services Administration, a federal agency, marshaled that program through federal government, and then what happens, it goes to the state, and then it goes to the city. And because New York is such a city-state environment, it was supercharged. So many firms, such as ours, known for our design work, have the opportunity to participate in these public projects, and that's been a game changer. So if you look around and you say, you know, these public projects are, if you notice them, are looking pretty great. And say yes, because design became the factor by which you were selected, not your low bid number. And now there's something they've been working at the federal level called construction excellence. So again, it's not the contractor who's saying, I got a truck and a ladder and I can build it for almost nothing. It's like, well, no. We actually care about the quality of the construction because that is long lasting. So every dollar you spend up front is a dollar that you're not going to be spending on maintenance of something that's not going to be able to withstand the test of time. And you know, New York is a tough environment because of the heavy use. Every square foot of New York City gets heavy use. It does have to stand up. So this has been a game changer, and now some friends of mine are doing it actually at the State Department. So that the State Department had its way of doing things previously. Now it's predicated on design excellence again. And we're hoping, you know, things are a bit unknowable right now, but we're hoping that that sense of design excellence can be maintained. So those of you who are be graduating soon will be going into a world that if you, I hope some of you choose to work on public projects, that you have an opportunity to engage at a level that is meaningful based on what you learned here. So, yes?
Asking from a student's point of view, because I'm just an entering student, and I heard from several levels of educators saying that what you get from a school is not necessarily the professional knowledge, is that the qualities that remains, even all the knowledge and the professional technical skills are removed from that. So how a college education is shaping your general way of thinking, of executing things. And like, speaking from your own experiences of 5 years at Cooper Union, like in that aspect, not necessarily the professional knowledge, but the disciplinary or the general thinking, how has that changed you?
You said it yourself, a way of thinking, right? So what my awesome Cooper Union education provided me, one of the things was a way of thinking. So it's not about, isn't it a cool design, the latest this, latest that, but it really is a way of thinking. And it's so valuable because you're going to need that. That's your foundation, a way of thinking. So whether you go in, wherever your education takes you, that valuable attribute, you know, that ability to think through ideas is everything. That's that bottom line, that is everything. It's the foundation of your creative voice, your creative energy.
Could you raise some specific examples, like how your work in the studio or in thesis has influenced your interest in projects in real life that you did after you?
Sure. Well, I can't even. Honestly, I don't remember why it had to be a bridge when I was, 24 years old. But that's what it was, and I was just so passionate about my project, my thesis project. And it was everything, morning, noon, and night, and big drawings and big model. And as I said in the beginning, what happened was it was taken out of the studio context, the school context, and put out into the public realm in a gallery in Soho. And it was so well received. It just, as I said, it gave me so much confidence. Like, you know what? What we do here at Cooper Union actually can be talked about outside of Cooper Union. And who knew if that was even possible? We are in here working morning, noon, and night, and you're 24 years old, and you don't know what your future is. You take it out, you put it there, and all of a sudden, people whose work you know start speaking to you, and you think, wow, maybe I have something to say. Yeah, and there's, your Cooper faculty and your dean, gave you that confidence to stand in the light and speak about what is important to you and how you think. So it's not like, oh, isn't that a cool project? No, it's how do you think? And so that way of thinking then went into my next group of projects, which happened to be small-scale retail environments, because that's what a 24-year-old gets, out in the world. And they were great because it was an extension of the studio in the sense that they were fixed spaces and I could go in and work on the tectonic, work on detail, and figure out what a construction drawing was. you know? And then from there, just built and built. And like I showed today, I can't tell you how thrilling it is to show you 2 fringe projects, you know, at this point. The one in Hudson River is very important to me because it really is, I feel like I'm back at my thesis project in a certain sense because of the very direct, very clear tectonic, but a real need. You know, the one at Cooper was speculative. It came full frame from here, as your work does, right? But all of a sudden, there I am in the Hudson River, literally in the Hudson River, trying to design and create a public space for performance with this structure that has a new tectonic I'm inserting through. I can't tell you how thrilling that is. Yes?
Any advice to thesis students?
Oh yeah, focus. Focus. And honestly, not to be cheeky, but just stand your ground and just follow it through. So it's not about, I had a great idea last week, I have a new idea. It's like it's probably not a new idea. You have one idea you're working on, it has many lines to it, but you need to refocus and keep persist in tracking it down and following it down. And my advice is you need to do a drawing a day. You just need to draw. You can't, it's not about, I remember, you know, we had some classmates and they would sit there just staring. What are you doing? It's like, I'm thinking, right? And I thought, wow, they're really smart. They're thinking. Because I was just I was working. And then at the, I'd have to tell you in reverse, looking backwards, think less, make more. Because then you have an opportunity to remove some things and then through serious editing of idea and material, it will be very clear. So that rigorous editing can only happen if you have lots of material, right? You'll be like, you know what? That's it. That drawing does everything I'm talking about, what's important to me, what I'm trying to frame, simultaneously. So that one drawing, it would be more important than 200 drawings because anybody came out of 200 drawings. So it wasn't like, here's my one drawing. What do you think? What do you think? Where are the other 199? So we can start looking and seeing what's happening. So yeah, think less, draw more. Yes, Elizabeth.
Hi.
Professor O'Donnell. My classmate.
Yes. So to go back out into the world again, and I like that you're talking about what you do in school, what you do outside, because I agree with you. The line, it's a specific line, but it is not an either-or line.
Mm-hmm.
I think what you draw back and forth across that line is incredibly elastic, fluid, and you need the skills and the thought, the ways of thinking on both sides of that line,
Mm-hmm.
But so you're moving into these pretty significant landscape projects, which is certainly very different than a thesis that was an object.
Yes,
And,
yes.
and so do you have, as part of your contract, to also design at that scale, or do you engage with teams of people? Like, how has the nature of your practice changed as you've gone into landscape? And also, if I may, how have your drawings perhaps taken on new forms or new obsessions since you're working in a much different field?
Yes. Well, I would have to say that through the Design Excellent contracts we received, we are the prime. So Karen Bausman Associates has the contract, and then we turn around and we can assemble our teams. They're not assembled for us. I turn around like, okay, what is the landscape architect I think would respond best to this project? What is the most responsible civil engineer? I depend greatly on my civil engineers because they're looking subsurface. I feel as if I've been through a graduate school with civil engineering working on these projects because it's something, because previously to my Design Excellent contracts, I was working with private people and private institutions, and it's not the same rough and tumble world as out in city-owned land. So you depend on these experts to be on your team. So I have been working with them. In terms of landscape, I do have a very strong opinion about many of the aspects of it, but I certainly, we're a team, so we work, and they have comments about the architecture as well, because they're really knit together. So we've gone from where they'll say, okay, well, okay, you're over here, and they put a box. right? And they say, okay, we get everything else. I'm like, oh, no. You can invade the box, and I'm invading the landscape, because they have to be holistic. They have to be knit together. That's the way it's going to be. So those have been interesting conversations. And trying to get the tectonic of the architecture with the tectonic of the landscape, because there are many landscape architects that see they see space differently and scale differently, but the tectonics of the landscape are something that you can relate to as an architect very closely. So we work with people whose work that we really admire. So in that sense, yeah. And I would say that this is a portfolio of specific work. We have private clients, and for me it's difficult in the sense of my drawing practice, because when I sit down, I try to just be me. I try to cut out the voices of all these personalities I deal with on a daily basis, and I try to just really, it's my zen, it's my meditation space, and I try to focus. And then, so what I do, just as I was saying about thesis, draw more, think less. I have all these drawings, and sometimes I lose track of where I am, so I spread them all out. I look at all of them, and I start saying, well, this one is about this, and I put this one next to this one, and something happens where you put one next to another. All of a sudden, this new conversation happens, and gives me many more ideas about how I perceive space, what's important, how one indexes marks, what form is, in fact. And so for me, that's a real kick. Just take all this material of thought located in a drawing and just shuffle the deck, like, Texas Hold'em, right? Like, okay, got a hand of cards, I'm going to throw some out and get some better ones, right? So I'm shuffling the deck and looking and trying to see what conversations happen. So I just did that 2 weeks ago and started on a whole new set of drawings based on what I saw. Because these set of drawings, some of them I hadn't looked at in 3 years probably. Like they're near the bottom, right? And I put them out, I'm like, oh, okay, you know what, this is about this and that's about that, but when I put it together, it becomes something else completely different. And it's a way for me to step outside of the arena of architecture form and the relationships there, and what I know. I want to know I want to see what I don't know in drawing, whereas opposed to architecture, you're the expert, so there's so much you know. And it's hard, as you get experience, there's so much you know. So you have to find a way to put that aside so you can get back to find out what you don't know and try to look for it.
I propose we expand the discussion over lunch.
Fabulous. Thank you all so much.